Hello, this is Jane, and for the next hour, I'll be reading from the August 6th issue of the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And I'm going to start on the front page, and the big headline here reads, "To Get to the Other Side. Bike riders, pedestrians take their first trips on new Canada-US bridge." And there's a great big picture here of the big, beautiful bridge and some people on bikes riding across. And let's see, under the picture it says cyclists between Windsor and Detroit break in Gordie Howe International Bridge's multi-use path on Wednesday, its first day. And the actual article is on the inside of the paper, and there's another headline here that reads, "Cyclists, pedestrians take to new span." Windsor, Ontario, the Gordie Howe International Bridge opened to pedestrians and cyclists under sunny skies on Wednesday. The cross-border bridge between Windsor, Ontario and Detroit opened to motorists last week after months of controversy over the project's finances. Officials said a Windsor man camped out for 28 hours to be the first Canadian to cross into the United States on the newly opened 2.5-kilometer path. A man from Michigan was the first person to cross into Canada from the U.S. and received a celebratory certificate. The bridge is named after Gordie Howe, a Canadian hockey player who played 26 seasons in the NHL, most of that time with the Detroit Red Wings. Officials said lines for the multi-use path were long, but they reassured people that the bridge has an estimated 125-year lifespan and there will be many opportunities to walk or bike across. The project has been mired in political disagreement, with U.S. President Donald Trump insisting in a social media post in February that the United States would have to be compensated before he would allow the bridge to open. A joint celebration with the U.S. to mark the bridge's opening was canceled over Washington's recent threat of new tariffs on Canadian goods. Liberal MPs have blocked parliamentary hearings aimed at clarifying what Prime Minister Mark Carney's government promised Trump to get the bridge open. The proposed agreement in principle says Canada will share half of net toll revenues with the United States for the next 15 years. The next article is also on the front page and is a Star exclusive. New details on gun for hire hit squad claims. Court documents shed light on Project South allegations. And this is by Brendan Kennedy and Abby O'Brien. A few days before York Region Police thwarted an alleged assassination of a Toronto jail official, someone using the alias Danny Phantom allegedly texted two pictures to a contact called LeBron James. The first was a screenshot of a Ministry of Transportation database search showing the official's home address. The second, a photo of the official's red pickup truck. If the car there need the hit squad, Phantom wrote after sending the pictures. 2 days later, the jail official's grandfather was threatened at gunpoint by a masked man who rang the doorbell at his Markham home. The next night, 3 masked gunmen were arrested in a dramatic takedown outside the official's home. The allegations are contained in court documents filed by Project South prosecutors in July and cast new light on the internal workings of an alleged network of guns for hire in what has become a worrying trend in Toronto area crime. In the court filing, the Crown lawyers identify Danny Phantom as Daquan Lemonius and LeBron James as Median Jackson, both of whom were arrested months ago and remain in custody. None of the allegations have been tested in court. The alleged botched assassination sparked Project South, a sprawling investigation into corruption within the Toronto Police Service, which led to criminal charges being laid against 28 people, including 7 active officers and 1 retired constable. Police allege Toronto Constable Timothy Barnhart conducted the illegal search for the home address of the jail official, whose identity is protected under a court-ordered publication ban. The screenshot of the official's address, investigators allege, was ultimately disseminated to criminals who subcontracted out the hit. Toronto police have said the city is home to a burgeoning gun-for-hire marketplace in which low-level criminals are paid to carry out brazen acts of violence. Hired guns are believed to be behind at least 27 shootings across the GTA so far this year, including a spate of high-profile incidents at the U.S. consulate, the homes of waste management executives, and at synagogues and Jewish schools. In June, Toronto police officer Mark Pinizzotto, a 43-year-old father of 2, was shot and killed during an early morning raid as part of the investigation into those shootings. We are still working actively to investigate who is responsible for orchestrating these criminal acts, Toronto Police Chief Myron Demkiw said at a news conference in June. What we know is that bad actors are using criminal elements in our city to carry out these dangerous incidents. The prosecutor's court filing said text conversations on a seized cell phone shed light on the inner workings of the alleged gun-for-hire network. Lemonius sent various requests to Jackson for the completion of different criminal jobs, prosecutors wrote in a factum filed in the Superior Court of Ontario. They discussed recruiting other individuals, as well as the prices for each job and how the money would be split. Lawyers for Jackson did not respond to requests for comment. Lemonius, who could not be reached prior to publication, is currently without legal counsel after his former lawyer was removed over a conflict of interest. His former lawyer had previously told the Star that Lemonius denies all of the allegations against him and intends to defend each one in court at the appropriate time. Lemonius wasn't the only accused criminal with the pictures of the jail official's vehicle and address, according to prosecutors. Around the same time police say he texted the images to Jackson, another suspected middleman was allegedly reaching out to his own hired guns about the same apparent job. After Devontae Barker Campbell was arrested in December for an unrelated crime, police allege they discovered a series of messages on his cell phone related to the attempted hit on the jail official, including the same screenshot of the official's home address, the picture of his truck, and a headshot photo of the official. Using the alias Dwayne Casey, Barker Campbell is alleged to have offered a legaz, that's in quotes, job, which police say is street slang for shooting someone in the leg, to an associate identified only as Thunder. Police say it seems Thunder declined the job, but Barker Campbell subsequently enlisted a contact using the alias Reality. My hitter's ready, Reality allegedly replied to Dwayne Casey on June 18, the same day the jail official's home was first targeted. The Star was unable to reach Barker Campbell by publication. His counsel was also removed from the record last week. His previous lawyer declined to comment on the allegations against him. Of the 3 alleged assailants arrested outside the official's home on June 20, 2025, only 29-year-old Almar Heath can be identified. The other 2 accused are under 18 and cannot be named. Heath, Lamonius, Jackson, and Barker Campbell have all been charged with conspiracy to murder the jail official. In separate court documents, police have alleged that another man, 24-year-old Keejean Doman, was connected to the Guns for Hire network. These allegations are contained in records Project South investigators filed in court in January to obtain warrants. They reflect what the investigators believed about their targets at the time, and the allegations have not been proven. Doman, whom investigators have also accused of using the Danny Phantom alias on encrypted messaging platforms, was arrested last September, moments after officers say they witnessed him fire more than a dozen rounds into a Vaughn home linked to slain GTA towing kingpin Alexander Vinogradsky. According to police, Barnhart, who investigators allege leaked confidential police information to criminals for money, had done an unauthorized search of the Vaughn address 3 days earlier. About a week later, York police searched a Toronto residence they believed to be linked to Doman and seized electronic devices. The heavily redacted records include brief summaries of text conversations investigators allege they discovered, including ones about assembling a team for a job, firearms, and a crime vehicle. Doman's lawyer, Bella Petuchinova, did not respond to the Star's questions. A member of Barnhart's legal team previously told the Star they plan to defend the allegations against him in court, not the media. Police alleged in June they uncovered a sweeping gun-for-hire network as part of a probe into a shooting at the U.S. consulate. Investigators would eventually link 27 shootings to that network, many of which were orchestrated through popular encrypted messaging apps such as WhatsApp, Signal, and Telegram. Young shooters who the Star previously reported could stand to earn less than $1,000 per job are often required to send through video proof of the shooting before getting paid. Police identified 4 men, all 18 and 19 years old, as part of that alleged network, laying a total of 43 charges in connection with 4 separate shootings. 19-year-old Nicholas Bennett, alleged to have hired the shot that killed Pinizzotto, the Toronto officer, has also been charged with first-degree murder. At the time, police did not say whether this alleged network is connected to the accused Guns for Hire in Project South, though DEMQ noted that they share a common modus operandi, which will be an element of consideration in the investigation as we uncover more and more about what's happening. Before I move on to the next article, let me first remind you that you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is also on the front page under the byline of Billy Bishop. PM points to Pearson Rail to explain jet ruling. Carney doesn't rule out expanding Island Airport in future. Forever is a long time. And this is by Robert Benzie and Alex Bollingal. Prime Minister Mark Carney is refusing to rule out commuter jets at Billy Bishop Airport in the future, but says his government's immediate transportation priorities in the Toronto region are expanding Pearson Airport and building the Alto high-speed rail line. Still, in a move that was privately welcomed by senior officials in Premier Doug Ford's government, Carney on Wednesday left the door open to one day allowing jets at Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport. Speaking for the first time about his government's July 24 decision to dash Ford's dream of an expanded island airport, the Prime Minister touted the forthcoming safety upgrades at Billy Bishop and the need to limit noise for waterfront residents and protect the environment. But he would not say that jets would never take off and land at the Lakeside Aerodrome. Forever is a long time, Carney said in Scarborough. But let's make it clear, it's a small part of a much bigger puzzle. That includes massive improvements to both terminals at Pearson International Airport and construction of the Alto Rail project that would link Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal, and Quebec City with 300-kilometer-per-hour trains. The Prime Minister made his comments while announcing his government will put up $2.7 billion for 18 rental housing projects across the city. Appearing alongside him was Mayor Olivia Chow, who opposes the Billy Bishop expansion and hailed the housing funding as a major win that will help thousands of people find more affordable housing. While Ford did not attend the Scarborough event on Eglinton Avenue West, he met with the Prime Minister later at an Ontario Line subway construction site in North York for a photo op with no media availability. Sources, speaking confidentially in order to discuss internal deliberations, said it was a cordial meeting away from the glare of press coverage, and the Premier was encouraged by Carney's responses to reporters' questions on Billy Bishop. That's because Carney didn't say no to expansion of the airport down the road, said one insider. Indeed, a federal feasibility study into the proposed expansion of Billy Bishop is continuing and will be completed this fall. Last week, Provincial Transportation Minister Prabmeet Sarkaria expressed hope that the project would eventually be cleared for takeoff, dismissing opponents as a small fringe group in Toronto and insisting Queen's Park was forging ahead with modernization of this airport because it's the right thing to do and it makes sense. As first reported by The Star, the Liberal government announced late on July 24 that it would not support Ford's proposal to extend the Billy Bishop runway for jets. That was 2 days before Carney triggered 3 federal by-elections, including one in the key lakefront Toronto riding of Beaches, East York. Liberals worried, as The Star reported, that the Billy Bishop controversy could cost them the long-held seat because the New Democrats have spoken out against the island airport plan. Last March, after Ford said Queen's Park was usurping City of Toronto's place in the tripartite agreement governing Billy Bishop, the Prime Minister referred to Ford's expansion proposal as a very interesting vision, big possibilities there. In exchange, the premier pledged his support for Carney's 1,000-kilometer Alto high-speed rail project that could be 15 years away from completion. On Wednesday, Carney denied there was any quid pro quo arrangement with Ford and countered when it was pointed out he had called the premier's vision interesting last spring. Interesting has quite a wide range of meanings, Carney said, insisting we did not have a policy on Billy Bishop, even though both he and Federal Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon had publicly praised the airport's economic benefits. What we had was an idea that was proposed, and then we did what governments should do, which is to consult. And we consulted the people of Toronto. It was very clear result of that consultation, he added. That was a reference to the online public consultation in which 87% of the 87,000 respondents opposed extending the runway for jets, which led McKinnon to quickly kibosh the expansion just before the by-election call. The 23 Liberal MPs who represent Toronto ridings have been feeling the heat over a busier island airport. In response to the federal about-face, 11 members of Ford's Eastern Ontario caucus, including 2 cabinet ministers and the progressive conservative House leader, issued a statement last week expressing concern about the prospect of Alto's trains slashing through farmland in their ridings. Ford, who is normally available to take reporters' questions on a weekly basis, has not done any public media events since the federal government's Billy Bishop announcement. And the next article, also from the front page, is under the byline of housing. Feds promise Toronto $2.7 billion for rentals. Advocates worried about affordability of all 5,600 homes. This is by May Warren. The City of Toronto will see $2.7 billion in funding from the federal government to build 18 housing projects over the next 3 years, as the city's construction market continues to suffer from a condo crash. It's the latest move aimed at injecting life into the housing sector, along with the recent HST rebate on new homes and the reduction of development charges in Toronto. Every home in this portfolio will be a rental, and together they span the entire continuum from supportive housing to affordable homes, said Prime Minister Mark Carney on Wednesday, speaking at a construction site in Scarborough for new co-op housing. For decades, Toronto simply did not build enough homes, and too much of what was built was unaffordable for most Torontonians, he added. The funding will create more than 5,600 new rental homes, and more than 1,800 of them will be deeply affordable, supportive, or rent-controlled, Carney said. Some housing advocates say they are concerned the funding will include money for projects being built by private developers that are not rent-controlled, and at least one project getting funding was at one point marketed online as a condo. The funding will fall into 2 channels, Carney added, and will include some loans. The first is what's called non-market, nonprofit housing, delivered through the New Build Canada Homes Federal Agency. This will include $310 million for 9 projects, for a total of nearly 1,900 homes on city-owned land that were approved but stalled due to financing issues. More than 700 will be affordable, meaning rent will cost less than 30% of income. The second funding channel is for housing built by private companies that will be rented out at market rates. but more than 1,000 units will be affordable, Carney said, with $1.8 billion provided through the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation's Apartment Construction Loan Program for 9 projects. They include new rental homes in Corktown and the redevelopment of the former Greyhound bus terminal in downtown Toronto. Too many Torontonians have been struggling to afford their rent, Carney said. Today's announcement is part of changing that. There did not appear to be any immediate plans to buy unsold condos, which could later be converted to rental units. A federal government plan that included money to purchase condos in British Columbia has drawn controversy and accusations of a developer bailout. It is also not clear how much of the funding is new. Housing, Infrastructure, and Communities Canada did not respond to a request to clarify by deadline. Nicola Taylor, who sits on the national board of tenant advocacy group ACORN, said the federal funding is a reasonably good start. But she said the fact that not all the units will be rent controlled and many will be in the hands of private companies is, quote, concerning, unquote. New market rent units first occupied after November 2018 in Ontario are not rent controlled, and some of the funding will support the development of such units. Taylor said she's concerned tenants in those projects might face sudden rent increases and be forced to move. Trying to find a home that they can afford is getting increasingly more difficult, she said. Toronto Mayor Olivia Chow, who also spoke at the announcement, said many families in the city are just trying to survive. She said the funding takes steps to fulfill a basic promise. If you work here, you should be able to afford to live here. Carney said the projects will use Canadian steel and lumber and said 80%, roughly 4,500 new rental homes will have shovels in the ground by the end of the year. David Wilkes, president and CEO of the Building Industry Land Development Association, said his organization applauds the announcement, which follows both HST and development charges relief. We really do believe this is a way to get the market working again, he said. And before I go on to the next article, I just want to remind you that you're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is titled, Premier Calls 3 By-Elections. Scarborough Southwest shaping up as most competitive campaign in years. And this is by Robert Benzie. Premier Doug Ford's Progressive Conservatives face their first electoral test since the private jet fiasco, the Billy Bishop controversy, and an expenses scandal that cost a minister his job. Ford has called by-elections for September 3rd in Scarborough Southwest, York Simcoe, and Hamilton East, Stony Creek, amid a slew of challenges for his third-term government. The premier triggered the contest Wednesday to fill vacancies left by ex-NDP MPP Dali Begum and former Progressive Conservative ministers Caroline Mulroney and Neil Lumsden. It's the first time so many provincial by-elections have been held on the same day since August 1, 2013, when 5 were conducted. The votes come as the Tories have faced criticism over Ford's purchase and panicked sale of a $28.9 million Bombardier Challenger plane in April, a stalled plan to expand Billy Bishop Toronto City Airport, and last month's resignation of Tourism Minister Stan Cho over questionable expense claims. Results of an Abacus data poll for the Star released Tuesday suggested the expenses imbroglio in which Greater Toronto Area PC MPPs were claiming for downtown hotel stays instead of commuting home has hurt the Tories and helped the New Democrats and Liberals. Against that backdrop, Scarborough Southwest is shaping up as the most competitive Ontario by-election in years. Physician Dr. Noor Taran, who owns 6 medical clinics in the Greater Toronto Area, is running for the Tories after winning a rare competitive nomination last month. Taran was the federal Conservative candidate in Scarborough Southwest in the April 2025 election. But the Ontario New Democrats won the riding in the last 3 general elections when Begum was their standard bearer. She quit provincial politics to defect to Prime Minister Mark Carney's Liberals and won the April 13 federal by-election in Scarborough Southwest. This time, the NDP hopeful is tenant advocate Fatima Shaban, who was also the new Democratic candidate in that federal contest last spring. Shaban received 5.9% of the vote to Begum's 69.6% at the time. Because of that, the New Democrats are hoping their now Liberal ex-colleague remains neutral in the provincial vote. I know that MP Begum has a lot of work to do herself, NDP leader Merritt Stiles said recently at Queen's Park. But interim Liberal leader John Fraser, who, like other Grit MPPs, hit the hustings for Begum last spring, is hopeful she returns the favor for their candidate Ahsanul Hafiz, owner of 30 Domino pizza outlets. Liberals help liberals, so I certainly would hope that would happen, Fraser said. Hafiz, like Begum and Taran, is a member of Scarborough Southwest's thriving Bangladeshi Canadian community, while Shaban is the daughter of a Slovakian mother and Egyptian father. Even though he's a political rookie, the pizza tycoon toppled one-time provincial Liberal leadership hopeful Nate Erskine Smith, then the 11-year MP from neighboring Beaches, East York, in a hotly contested May nomination race. Erskine Smith, who abandoned his bid for the Ontario Party helm, then resigned from federal politics, is now considering a city council run. The Green candidate is former municipal civil servant Mark Beckering, who also ran in Scarborough Southwest in the February 2025 election. Ford conceded to the Star in April that it would be a challenge to win Scarborough Southwest, but I say never say never. In York Simcoe, considered one of the safest PC ridings in Ontario, the Premier appointed East Gwillimbury Town Councillor Susan Leahy to be his candidate. Mulrooney, who resigned in June, urged him to select Leahy for the former Riding Association president and a party stalwart. The Liberals are fielding Naomi Davison, a Georgina and York Region councillor, while the New Democratic candidate is Bobby Nickmard, and the Greens have nominated Matt Pierce. In Hamilton East, Stony Creek, Lumsden's resignation, which took effect Tuesday, has opened the door a comeback by former NDP MPP Monique Taylor, who quit provincial politics a year ago to run federally, only to finish a distant third for the New Democrats. But she faces a tough fight against PC candidate Jeff Beatty, who local city councilor, a local city councilor, and Liberal Heino Dosing, runner-up to Lumsden in the February 2025 provincial election. Pascal Marchand is the Green Party candidate. The next article is titled, Hundreds Arrested in Retail Crackdown. Police investigations targeted steal-to-order trend across GTA. This is by Joshua Smith. They walk in with a giant suitcase and masks covering their faces. Later, they're seen casually walking out with the suitcase, carts, and hands full of booze as an LCBO employee watches from a distance. The scene was one of several shared by Toronto police on Wednesday as they announced hundreds of arrests and thousands of charges following a series of organized retail crime investigations that addressed a growing steal-to-order trend across the city and region, including theft at the LCBO. In some of those cases, the thieves advertised the sale of items they hadn't yet stolen, authorities say. In total, officers made 546 arrests, laid 4,033 charges, and recovered more than $1.6 million in stolen merchandise as part of the nearly 2-year-old initiative, police said at a news conference. Police didn't disclose further details, citing ongoing court proceedings. However, they highlighted 3 of the investigations, including one that led to 20 arrests and more than 400 charges. The other 2 probes both led to 4 arrests and over 100 charges. Chief Myron Demke credited the work of Superintendent Ron Taverner of 23 Division in Etobicoke, who was tasked with creating an organized retail crime unit nearly 2 years ago to look into significant financial losses incurred by retail companies due to theft. This work is essential to disrupting organized crime, which often relies on proceeds from these crimes to fund other criminal activity, Demke said. The accused are often connected to larger organized crime networks involved in the distribution and resale of stolen goods, Taverner said, adding that nearly half of the arrested individuals, 259, were involved in multiple cases, indicating many of those involved are not first-time offenders. Taverner played videos at the news conference of thieves making off with large quantities of goods from an LCBO, a Shoppers Drug Mart, and a Walmart in Etobicoke. They walked in with bags and even suitcases, Taverner said. They blatantly leave the store with these items full of stolen goods. In the second clip shown in the video, an individual leaves a Shoppers Drug Mart with a full bag of items. Someone confronts and tries unsuccessfully to stop them from leaving, but is able to pull the bag free, after which it appears to be empty. The third and final clip, a group of people confront and start filming some apparent thieves in a parking lot outside of Shoppers Drug Mart as the suspects try to get into their car. One of the people trying to get into the car comes out carrying a large bin full of goods. Rui Rodriguez, executive advisor for the Retail Council of Canada, explained at the news conference that the people committing these thefts are being instructed to do it. These folks organize themselves because somebody has asked them to do this activity, he said, adding that a lot of young offenders are involved in the cases that resulted in arrests. These goods are going to other enterprise criminals who are then selling the goods off, whether it's through online channels, shipping them off some more, or selling them through other illicit marketplaces, Rodriguez said. Amid the significant growth of the reseller and illicit markets online in the last 5 years, the retail advocates said people are making ads for items they haven't secured yet. We see people that are advertising goods for sale they don't have, so it's steal to order, he said. Taverner acknowledged police are mindful about the safety of retail employees and emphasized that it's investigators, not employees, who are expected to go after the thieves. That's a very real issue, is the safety of staff, and that is our major concern, public safety, he said. Most retailers have policies in place that they don't ask their employees to intervene when thefts are taking place. So that's our job to interdict those types of things. Rodriguez emphasized that the crimes aren't small in nature. We're not talking shoplifters, he said at a news conference. We're talking the organized and prolific, the 15% that causes 90% of the issues. Peel police revealed the results of a similar crackdown in May. They made 65 arrests and laid 545 charges in an investigation looking into retail theft that targeted businesses across Brampton and Mississauga. The next article is titled TTC Supervisors in Favor of Strike Action. And this is by Gabriel Hilty. Station supervisors at the TTC have overwhelmingly voted in favor of strike action as they negotiate their first collective agreement with the transit agency. CUPE Local 5585, the union which represents 115 TTC station supervisors, says that 88 of its members voted last week and 97% were in favor of strike action. In a news release on Wednesday, the union said that negotiations on the agreement had stalled, alleging that the TTC is seeking concessions from workers, including attempting to introduce split shifts, reduce sick leave protections, and eliminate or freeze shift premiums and impose disability provisions weaker than those of other unionized TTC workers. Station supervisors unionized in 2025 after years of raising concerns about workplace safety and staffing, the union said in the news release, adding that supervisors are increasingly sent to emergencies and security-related incidents. The union said it remains committed to negotiating a fair first collective agreement. CUPE spokesperson Jesse Mintz said that the union and the TTC are in active conversation and looking at multiple dates this month to resume bargaining talks. There is no current timeline for a strike, Mintz added. In a statement, TTC spokesperson Stuart Green said the transit agency is aware of the union's vote. The TTC respects and values all of its employees, including the supervisors, Green said. With the assistance of a conciliator, we continue to bargain with CUPE to reach a fair first contract. The local's acting president, Maher Abad, said the union won't accept a contract that moves us backward. TTC management refuses to acknowledge how much this job has changed or the realities we face every day. We deserve predictable schedules, meaningful workplace support, adequate sick leave, and fair compensation, Abad said. The vote in favor of potential strike action by TTC station supervisors follows negotiations between the transit agency and workers earlier this year. Nearly 700 electrical and signal workers represented by CUPE Local 2 reached a one-year agreement with the TTC that avoided a work stoppage weeks before the FIFA World Cup kicked off in Toronto. The two sides blew past negotiation deadlines and extended talks before coming to a tentative deal on May 18. And I need to pause here one last time to remind you that you are listening to a reading of articles and features from the Toronto Star on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. And the next article is titled, More Than 100 Properties Razed as Destruction Mounts. Officials warn of potential for more activity caused by dry lightning storms. And this is by Daryl Greer. Vernon, British Columbia. Wildfire destruction in British Columbia's interior continued to mount on Wednesday, with authorities outside Clinton confirming structures had been lost on about 120 properties, while more tales of devastation emerged from near Okanagan Lake, where 230 homes were razed over the weekend. Colton Davies, an information officer with the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, said some properties have lost multiple structures due to the massive Pear Lake fire that forced the evacuation of Clinton and surrounding areas on July 24, with about 1,500 properties in the district remaining under evacuation order. The impact has been very significant from this fire in the rural TNRD areas and tragic, certainly for a lot of people who have suffered losses, he said. He said the district was still working to determine the exact number of buildings destroyed, while the village's mayor, Roland Stankey, said last week that damage in his municipality was still being tallied. Other developments in BC's wildfire battle included a firefighting helicopter crashing into a lake near Clinton on Tuesday, with the BC Wildfire Service saying the pilot suffered minor injuries, while weeks-long evacuation orders came down in and around Boston Bar in the Fraser Canyon Wednesday. The province's other major losses are about 300 kilometers southeast of Clinton, where the chief of the Okanagan Indian Band said about 30 homes of band members and 200 non-band members on its reserve were destroyed by the Bradley Creek blaze that roared through the area near Vernon on Saturday. Among the losses were rows of trailer homes on reserve land off West Side Road on the shore of Okanagan Lake. The fire that razed Okanagan Lake properties to their foundations was still burning out of control on Wednesday, although the Wildfire Service said there was no significant growth on the blaze overnight. The residents who escaped that blaze are among about 8,000 people who Emergency Management Minister Kelly Green said Tuesday had been forced from their homes across British Columbia due to wildfires. Much of Metro Vancouver was meanwhile shrouded in high-risk wildfire smoke on Wednesday from the fires that span much of the province's south. The smoke that was rated 9 on the 10-level Air Quality Health Index used by Environment Canada enveloped areas north of the Fraser River, including Vancouver, Burnaby, the North Shore, Coquitlam, and Maple Ridge, as well as the eastern Fraser Valley. Officials were also warning of the potential for more fires from dry lightning storms. Cliff Chapman with the BC Wildfire Service said temperatures were expected to increase to the mid-30s, with dry lightning forecasts for Thursday, which could lead to fire starts across the southern interior, where most of BC's estimated 115 wildfires are burning. And the next article is titled, Sick Coyote Found Refuge in Bedroom. Pup who walked in through open door treated for mange. This is by Kristen Lautens. Alice Kent said she's left the back door open to her Christie Pitts home during the summer months for nearly 20 years without incident. It'll never happen again after a mangy coyote walked in and nested inside her Christie Pitts bedroom Tuesday. Kent said her cleaner discovered the pup relaxing on the bed around 11 a.m. in the house on Pendrith Street, just north of Christie Pitts Park. It camped out in the room for about 90 minutes, defecating and bleeding from the mange-induced sores, before wildlife volunteers were able to safely take the coyote away. I have no idea how it happened, Kent told the Star. We're going to get a screen door, though. Kent was with her husband and 2 adult children when her housekeeper casually walked downstairs and explained she thought there was a fox in the room. Maybe it was a stuffed animal, Kent remembers thinking to herself. Kent cracked open the door, saw a coyote about 50 centimeters tall laying on her bed, and quickly shut it. Kent was able to reach out to Toronto Wildlife Center volunteers who happened to be only a couple blocks away on another call as police and neighbors gathered around to see the excitement. It was like a sight of glory seeing these people coming down the middle of the street with nets and crates and everything, she said. Both Toronto Police and Toronto Wildlife Center confirmed the incident. The coyote likely wandered in because locals have been feeding the coyotes, making it comfortable approaching people, and because it was seeking a safe shelter while sick, said Natalie Korvanen, the executive director of the Toronto Wildlife Center. The coyote's mange has been treated and it's now back with its family, according to Carvonen. And the next article is titled, Mainsbridge said the GOAT changed the face of TV news. CBC rival says he turned anchor role into true journalism. This is by Nicole Thompson. Peter Mainsbridge says the Canadian public owes Lloyd Robertson a debt of gratitude. Robertson, the longtime face of CTV News, who died Tuesday at age 92, argued that anchors should be considered true journalists, not just orators. This guy changed the face of television journalism in our country, Mainsbridge said on a video call Wednesday morning. And for a lot of younger people now, they don't recognize that. But those of us who were there and have benefited from it all realize that. Mainsbridge worked with Robertson in the early 1970s and said the newsman's departure from CBC in 1976 was an important milestone in the history of television broadcasting in Canada. Robertson left the public broadcaster because he believed that TV anchors should do more than just read a teleprompter. They should be true journalists. At the time, CBC wasn't willing to let its anchors report, but CTV told Robertson they would expand the job description if he joined the network. Mainsbridge called it a triumph, not only for Robertson, but for all TV anchors in Canada, because CBC realized it would have to adapt to compete with CTV. Mainsbridge is the former chief correspondent for CBC News and for many years anchored The National, putting him in direct competition with Robertson. We were rivals, but we weren't enemies, Mainsbridge said. In the sports world, they have this term, the GOAT. They talk about particular athletes being the greatest of all time, Mainsbridge said. LeBron James, Tom Brady, Wayne Gretzky. Lloyd was the GOAT. And next I have an article that the zoo reports the birth of a rare pygmy hippo calf by Xavier Mesquita. Step aside, Mudang. The pygmy hippo throne may have always been a slippery seat, and the Toronto Zoo just sent up an heir apparent, endangered, squishy, and a Scarborough native. Born Sunday morning to 13-year-old mom Kindia, the still unnamed calf is off exhibit for now, but the zoo is plainly hoping to bottle a little of the Mudang magic with camera footage of the baby hippo shared Wednesday morning. According to the zoo, staff noticed Kindia showing signs of labor around 8:15 a.m. Tiny feet appeared just after noon, and about 90 minutes of active labor later, one final push brought the healthy female calf into the world. The newborn was up on her feet within roughly 15 minutes and confidently navigating her space within hours, while zoo staff watched over her via cameras through the night. It's Kindia's third calf. Our team will continue to closely monitor both mom and calf around the clock during these important first days to ensure they continue to progress well together. A news release said Wednesday. Pygmy hippos are listed as endangered on the IUCN Red List, with only an estimated 2,000 to 3,000 left in the wild, the release noted. The zoo says it will continue to post updates on social media. I just have time for one small little bit, and this was a letter to the editor, and it says, a favorite Lloyd Robertson line. My favorite Lloyd Robertson line came after the Blue Jays won the World Series. I don't recall if it was the first or second time. He announced that our Americans beat their Americans, and that was written by John Van Buren from Toronto. So I will end here with, you've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the August 6th issue of the Toronto Star. Your reader has been Jane. Thank you for listening.